G'day Trailblazers, my name is Cam, and for today's video we are following on from episode 1 in our introduction to AMPscript. This time we'll be looking more at some numbers, dates and date formats, and the lookup rows function inside of Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So in the first part of our AMPscript introduction, we imported our sample rows data, which we used to test out some AMPscript functions. For today, we're going to need some additional data to do the lookup function. So we can jump back into our GitHub resource. We have a second set of data here, our EventLog.csv, which we're using in today's examples. And just like before, we can click onto our code here and see all the fields that we need to import to create our new data extension. So let's jump back into Marketing Cloud and create a data extension by finding our previous sample rows data and making a brand new one. We can call this one our EventLog, just to make sure our names are all the same. So let's go and create our EventLog data extension by going on the Create button inside of our Email Studio and creating a new standard data extension. Call this one the EventLog, making sure, of course, it is going to be a sendable, testable data extension for this example. We'll go next as there are no data retention policies. We'll skip next again. And now for our fields. We've only got a few fields this time around. So we'll be using our ID field, which looks just a similar one to our previous ID field for our subscribers. We're going to also want to bring in our first name field, another text field, of course. We want to bring in our attended field. Here we got true and false. So this one looks like a Boolean field. So here's attended event, Boolean. We're also going to bring in the lucky door prize. It's a numeric field and there's no decimal points here. So we're going to bring in a numeric field, a number field here. And finally, the voucher code, another string. And this one looks to be, again, less than 50 characters long. So we'll use a string value there as well. Now, key difference from our first data extension that we built, this time around, there are in fact some nulls, some blank fields. So we will need to make sure that we tick the nullable option for a few of these fields. So do it just like that. And of course, we'll keep our sim relationship on this one as the ID is on subscriber key, and we'll go create. Now for this data extension, our goal for today is going to be to use our existing sample rows to look up our event rows. But before we do, let's go and load that data in. And similar as before, we'll jump onto our GitHub and click the raw button to load up the CSV of this data. You can see here is our raw CSV. We can right click and go save as and save this eventlog.csv to our desktop. Just like that, we'll go save, jump back into Marketing Cloud, and on that EventLog data extension, we'll choose the import option. By choosing import, we'll choose my computer, we'll browse the files and choose our eventlog.csv and open that file. It is going to be a comma delimited file as before, in Australian date format, and because there's no existing data, we'll choose the overwrite option and respecting text qualifiers, followed by next. Now finally, for our mapping, again, as before, we did follow the same naming convention, so we can leave the map by header row ticked because they're all the same names. We're going to go next and we can choose to import our data. Now hopefully, just after a few seconds, we should see that that data has been imported. We can check that by clicking on the folder on the left-hand side to refresh our screen, and hopefully we see, and there we go, all 9 records were imported. So let's now open up the email that we did on the last learning session, the How to Create Your First Email Marketing Cloud 2.0, and we'll start back where we finished off from our last episode. Back in our text field here, we can see our AMPscript from last time. We can now jump in and start to write some new AMPscript for today's session. Now our first one to go through is going to be the lookup function, which allows us to look up variables in a second data extension using something from our first data extension. This is very similar to a VLOOKUP function in Excel, for those who know their way through Excel. The ability to specify a value to look up on and to return values from a second data set based on that lookup. So, just like before, we can also jump into our AMPscript documentation. We can find this for ourselves by scrolling down and finding our AMPscript function reference. This one is a data extension function, so we can scroll down to our data extensions. We're going to look for our lookup function for today, our data extensions lookup. As you can see from our function for today, we've got a few more things to look at in our function. The lookup function does contain 4 ordinals or properties for us to fill out. Let's step through how this looks in the example code. Now I do have a video on this which I'll put in the description below, so you can also go back and check this out for yourself separately. Now for today, we're going to be looking up from our sample rows data onto our brand new event log. So we do have our syntax here, but let's start from scratch by taking our lookup function from above, copying this and going straight back into our AMPscript in our Salesforce Marketing Cloud email. Now we did have our very helpful AMPscript from before, but let's start from scratch by dropping all that previous work out and starting from the beginning. Now, for a lookup function, we should do this ideally in a code block. You can do it in line, but I'm going to do it in a code block today. So we'll start off by going %% and a square bracket, followed by a square bracket and %%, and there's our code block. Now for today, if we have a look very closely at our data of our two data sets, they both have this ID field. The event log has the ID field, and of course our sendable data extension, our sample rows, also has that ID field. Now our goal for today will be, based on each subscriber, we want to return back some information about an event they attended. We'd like to know, did they attend the event, yes or no, true or false? So to do this, we're using our lookup function. So back in our content of the email, we can use our code block to start writing out this function. And so we're going to say something along the lines of our lookup value. Now we do want to, of course, return the value and save it as a variable in AMPscript. So to save variables in AMPscript, we of course use our set command. So set what? Well, set at attended event, I think is a good variable name. So did you attend the event? Yes or no? Well, let's find out. We're going to look up that data extension. So how does our lookup function work? How do these four variables work in our data extension lookup command? Well, the first function property here is the name of the data extension from which to return the specified values. So what data extension name are we looking up? Well, we can get that from our name of our data extension, which was of course for this case called EventLog. So we're looking up EventLog. So I'll copy EventLog and put that as my first value. We'll look up EventLog. Now our second value is the name of the column of which value to return. Name of the column that we want to return the value on. Okay, so what value do you want to return? Well, we want to have a look at what value. If we have a look at our data of our event log, did you attend the event, true or false? So it's called the attended event column that we're going to return. We're going to return that value of attended event, so we'll copy that value back into our email and say, in the event log table, we want to return attended event. Now to return the attended event on what conditions? Well, on the condition of, the third value here, name the column to be used to identify the row containing the lookup value. So what row do we look up to find this value? Well, according to our structure, we have this ID field, and the ID field contains that subscriber's ID field from the sample rows data. So we'll look up the ID field to return back the corresponding attended event value. So we'll be looking up the ID field. And finally, it's going to be what value to look up. So what value to match against. Well, again, we do have our subscriber ID from our previous table, the sample rows table, our sendable data extension for this email. So go into our sample rows, and straight away we can find it's called the ID table, so the ID field. So back in our email, it'll be the sendable attribute or the data extension field of ID, which of course we can get from our drop down here. It is the ID field, or of course we can type it out. Now, key thing here, we're not saying %% ID because we're already inside our AMPscript code block, so we don't need to do %% again. We just write ID. If we put brackets around it, it's now this static string value of ID, which is incorrect. We want it to be the looked up value of ID, which means there is no quotation marks and no % signs. That's how we do our lookup function. Looking up the static value of event log, using the static value of the attended event field name, looking up the ID field name, again static, with the dynamic value of ID coming from our data extension that we send to. So that all done, we should now have the event attended true or false record coming back for each person. So let's say hi, and we'll do our first name personalization once more. Hi, first name, and did you attend the event? And then we'll have our value. Of course, to do our value, we use %% equals for a function, doing our v function, and then closing off our inline AMPscript. And of course, what are we printing? What value are we outputting? The attended event variable here. So copy and paste that in. Let's give it a try. So we'll go next and have a look for ourselves as to what each of our subscribers has as the attended event value. So for our first subscriber, we have, hey Cody, did you attend the event? And there's a blank. How interesting. So Cody, we have no value coming back. Here our next one, and Cloudy says false. Okay, so Cody was blank and Cloudy was false. How interesting. Let's have a look at why that happened. If I copy Cloudy's ID here, I go back into my data extension, back into my event log, let's have a look at those values for ourselves. So look them up for ourselves by clicking into the data extension, go into our records, we can go Control F to bring up our Windows search function and paste. And of course, Cloudy, we can see there, the event attended was false. Okay, that matched, that's fine. Back in our email, we had an issue with, it was Cody, here we are. Cody was blank. Now, why was Cody blank? If I copy the Cody's ID, go into my data extension, go Control F and search, oh dear, there is in fact no Cody even invited to the event. And that's why we returned back a blank, because there was no data at all returned in that lookup function in AMPscript. So how can we fix this? Well, by default, we could say that if you didn't attend the event because you weren't invited, your default must be false. If you were invited, and of course didn't attend, then you'd be false. But if you were invited and you did attend, and hopefully we can find one of our Trailblazer subscribers here who did attend, Hootie wasn't invited, Ernie was invited and did attend. Okay, let's maybe combine two of our learnings so far. We can use our lookup function and our if statement to make a default value in case of subscribers like Hootie who weren't invited and therefore there's no data returning. Let's jump back into our email and have a look for ourselves. Back in the email now, let's have a close look at the AMPscript and see if there's another way we can write the AMPscript to ensure there's always an outcome for our subscribers. Now, as we know, there are three possible outcomes of what could have happened with the data. The subscriber was not invited, therefore couldn't have attended. They were invited and did attend, or they were invited and they didn't attend. Those three outcomes we have to now render through some AMPscript, which of course requires some logic, which we did learn in our previous session is our AMPscript if statements. We can jump back into our documentation, have a close look at the if statements again, and see there's one keyword that we didn't use last time, and that's our else if function. Now, the else if allows for an additional conditional statement to be processed to allow for multiple possible outcomes. So you can use this one to create our three possible outcomes rather than the default two for an if statement. Let's try it out now by jumping back into our content builder and modify our AMPscript code in the email. So of course we will look up the EventLog data extension to return back their value. We have to check if it came back as true, false, or empty. So we can write if the event attended AMPscript value here was to be equal to true, then you did attend. Perfect. So we'll say, then you attended. Great. Else if the event attended value was equal to false, then you were invited but didn't attend. Else, if you weren't attended or not attended, then you must have not invited. And then of course we can end our if statement just like that. Now, of course, this // function here, that is a comment line, the ability to not render that piece of code as AMPscript, and just make a little note for yourself later on. So I now have to fill out these three sections, the attended, not attended, or not invited. Now I can do this, of course, by making another set of variables. So I could say set message to be equal to, if you did attend, then it can be thanks for coming to the event. Of course, the message would be if you did not attend, then it's sorry, you missed the event. And of course, if we didn't have you invited at all, maybe our message should be nothing at all. So instead we'll say blank. We'll actually not put a message at all because we don't want you to know that we had an event and you weren't invited. That'd be upsetting. Let's try it out for ourselves now by just printing out that value under the high first name personalization to show the message value that we've now declared and see what comes back. So we'll now preview the email and check out our AMPscript code so far. Looking up a data extension, returning back a value, then using our if statement to see if they attended or not. As we know, Hootie was not invited and therefore did not attend, so a blank there, so that's good. Let's go back one and we can find Blaze, sorry you missed the event. Okay, we can check out Blaze. You can see here Blaze attended false. Good-o, so a match there. Let's go for a couple more. Cloudy missed the event as well. Cody wasn't attended. And hopefully, Brandy, thanks for coming to the event. Let's check it out. And Brandy attended true. Perfect. So now we have all three possible scenarios being rendered up by that AMPscript if statement, checking to see if they looked up as true, looked up as false, or if those two things weren't either true, then show nothing at all. So now that we've mastered the lookup function, let's have a close look at some of our different data type fields. We had a date type field, which of course was our join date in our original setting data extension. Let's have a close look at how that date type field was used. Jumping back into our AMPscript, and let's just move down here in our code to use another section. We can of course paste in that join date AMPscript. Now our value of join date will print out exactly as the date is shown in the data extension. So let's try it out now by going next and rendering our email exactly as it is, showing the join date in its pure form. As you can see, it's not the most friendly date format to use, and in fact, for most email sensors, you probably wouldn't want to include things like the AM or PM or the actual time. You would just want the date. So how can we use AMPscript now to change how that original date value was stored in the data extension to return back a more human-readable value? Well, jump into our AMPscript, and there's a cool function, which is our date format field. So jump into our documentation, and of course, under our AMPscript functions here, we can find under our AMPscript function reference, we can scroll down and find our date time section with the format date field. Now, our format date function here will allow us to use 4 attributes to specify how a date should be formatted and then represented in our email, SMS, or cloud page. So let's have a closer look at how the date format or the format date function works. We can copy this of the code here and jump back into our email, and let's start to write it out. Let's do this one as another part of our code block. So we'll make some space, and we'll go set at output date should be equal to our format date function. So let's have a look at that code again. Our format date function has those 4 properties, and the first one, of course, is a value to receive, which we'll have to then format. So what date are we going to format? What's our value? Well, lucky for us, we actually have that value coming in from a data extension, and it's the join date value. So we're going to be formatting the join date value. Back over on the documentation for our format date function, we can find our second ordinal, which is to provide the date format string to use to specify the output value of our date. Now, it must be an ISO compliant value using the RFC 1123 compliant values. That sounds a bit scary to you, don't worry. You can scroll down to the usage section. You can click on the documentation here to see the AMPscript date and time formatting. By clicking on that link, it loads another documentation page for us, which is our formatting rules to use. And as you can see, the date we have to provide will be in a YMD for year, month, day format. You can see here that each of our time components, our years, our months, our dates or days, hours, minutes, seconds, the AM, PM, and also the time offset are all provided using some various character codes, Y for year, M for month, D for day, and so on. So for our date format function today, we can specify our very own combination of these characters to produce a value output. So let's give it a go. Lowercase y for year, uppercase M for month, because lowercase m is for minutes, and then for date we use a lowercase d. So lowercase y, uppercase m, lowercase d. We'll go back into our email. Let's have a look at our format date and what can we provide. Well, in quotation marks, let's do lowercase y, we'll do 4 y's, 2 uppercase m's for month, and 2 lowercase d's for date, all in one string like that. We'll see what it looks like. Documentation for the third ordinal is the time format. Now we don't want to show time today. We don't want to show the hours, minutes, or seconds, so we're just going to leave that one blank. We'll put 2 quotation marks with nothing between to leave that one blank. The fourth ordinal is going to be our culture code that we use. Now for this one, the date format is coming from our Marketing Cloud instance, so I'm going to keep it as ENUS, as that is the date format coming from our Marketing Cloud data extension. Paste that in just like that, and now we have our output date function complete. Now before we go and print this out into our email, let's make a little bit more code so you can see what has changed between the original value and our new formatted value. What I'll do is I'll put a join date function below. I'm going to say the join date was equal to originally what? Well, it was originally our sample rows join date value, just like that. And below it is going to be our formatted date value. What do we change it to? And of course, we can now output the output date. And how do we do this? Well, of course, we can use our v function. %% equals to open the function, equals %% to close it. Our function is the v function in round brackets. And what value are we printing out? We are printing out our set output date value. So copy that and paste it there. So now we have our join date original value, and our format date formatted value. Let's go next and check it out for ourselves and see what it looks like for our subscribers. So for our first subscriber, we have Brandy, whose join date was the 24th of January 2021. And we can see here the month, day, year American format. And now I've made it change to a year, month, day 2021, month of January, day 24th. Okay, that's a bit hard to read though. Let's go back into our email and add some hyphens so we can actually read it a bit more easily. Year, hyphen, month, hyphen, day. We'll go next and try it out now and see what it looks like. Okay, that's a bit easier. Year, month, day. Good formatting. If you wanted to, though, we could change from just these numeric year, month, and days. Go back into our documentation. We could instead have the full output of the month by using M 4 times rather than just twice. Or once, of course, to drop the 0. Let's try with 4 uppercase M's and see what comes out. Again, Brandy did join in January, so hopefully if we put in 4 M's, we're going to see the word January. So 4 M's, we'll go next and try it out for ourselves. And there we go, 2021, January 24. If we wanted to as well, we could put the day as a full printed day. By doing this, we can have a look at documentation, and the date example to print out the full word is 5 lowercase d's. So go into our document here, back into our content, and we can go back into our function. We do have 2 d's there. Let's put a space and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 d's to print out the entire name. And hopefully, if Brenny joined on Sunday, we will see the word Sunday. We do indeed, perfect. We'll check some more values, and Appy joined on February 8th, a Monday. Yes indeed, looking good. So we now can format our date time, which is a really useful function if your dates are coming in as database dates, or as a Marketing Cloud formatted date, as you can see here. We can now use our FormatDate function to produce a date how we want to show it in our email. Of course, I've used hyphens and spaces in my example here, but you can replace it with any characters you want to separate and print the date out how you need to for your email. Jumping back into our sample rows data extension, we can see that our join date data extension value was a date data type. Now, there's one more data type we haven't played with yet, and that is the numeric data type. For that, we can jump into our new data extension, our EventLog, and find our lucky draw prize was in fact a number data type. We can jump into our records and check it out for ourselves, and in fact they are a numeric value. Now, being a number data type means we can treat them as a number, which means we can add and subtract, multiply and divide. We can also format that number to show as a currency or a percentage or some other formatting for a number. Let's check it out now by getting our lucky door prize value into our email and formatting it some different ways. For example, putting some currency information into it. Back in Content Builder now and back onto our email, let's write the code that we need to bring our numeric value in. And because this email is sending to our sample rows data extension, we'll have to make another lookup function to bring back the value that we need to use that entry door prize value. So let's make some space and make a brand new AMPscript value, this time setting to output our number. The output number is going to be a few things. First of all, we're going to have to go and get the lookup value. We're looking up the event log once more. We won't get back the attended event field though, no. Instead, let's bring back that lucky door prize. So what we'll do is back in our content, let's copy this same lookup. Let's copy that lookup code, and so the output number is going to be equal to the lookup on event log, getting back what field? Well, we want to get back that lucky door prize field. So go into our properties of our data extension, copy lucky door prize, our numeric field, go back in and paste it there as the field to return where ID matches ID. We now have our lookup number being returned. We can try it out for ourselves by making some space here. Let's make sure that our lucky door prize is equal to, copy our V function here and say output number. There we go. Is our output number being selected for the customers who of course attended the event and have a lucky door prize value? Well, let's check it out for ourselves. Our first subscriber to check against is of course Appy. Now I don't think that Appy attended the event. I can go into my records and check. Appy did not attend, therefore no lucky door prize, but Brandy did attend the event. So let's go to Brandy's record. Here we are, Brandy, and lucky door prize equals 50. Perfect. We are getting that numeric value back into our email. So back into our content now, we definitely have the value coming through. Let's now do our number modifications on it. I can jump over to my documentation. I can find my FormatNumber documentation here. So again, under AMPscript on the Salesforce Marketing Cloud API documentation site, we will find under AMPscript, under the AMPscript function reference, if we scroll right down under the math functions, we'll find FormatNumber. It's allowing us to, of course, take a raw input and format it various different ways. Our FormatNumber function, of course, having 3 ordinals, 1, 2, 3. The first being the number to format, the second being how to format it, the third being a culture code to use as needed. The example here showing you can take the value 1234.4567, changing into a currency, C for currency, and you can optionally provide a code to indicate the precision, so 2 being 2 decimal places, so currency with 2 decimal places in the EN/US code, which means dollars, the currency, and there it is there, $, and only 2 decimal places, not all 3, of course, rounding up there for 2 decimal places. Very cool. Let's try it out now by jumping into Marketing Cloud. Let's copy this code. It's a great example to use. Go back into Marketing Cloud, back into our content. Let's now modify our lookup. We have our output number. Let's now make our formatted number. So we're going to say set at format number is going to be equal to what? Well, our format number function here. So we'll copy our format number function, just that piece, and put it just there. Don't need that code anymore. Now, our format number is going to take what number as the input for our first ordinal? Well, it's going to be taking our lucky door prize value. So we'll take output number, copy that at value, and paste it here in the first ordinal. Now, what should we use as our formatting structure? Well, currency 2 is a good start. Of course, our original data is just the number with no decimal points. So hopefully, if we do this, it's going to add a $ in front and 2 decimal points at the end to make it a currency formatted number. We can try it out. We've now got the format number coming through. So let's make another row under our lucky door prize. This, of course, will be called our format number. We're going to output our format number. There we are. Clean up our code, and let's try it out for ourselves. Of course, Brandy is still our sample record, and hopefully for Brandy, we see $50, decimal place, and then perfect 2 zeros afterwards. So we can do a currency conversion. Very cool. We could change it though and just make it so there's no decimal places by going back into our code. Listening to our documentation here, it says you can optionally provide the code for how many decimal places or the precision to use. 2 gives us 2 decimal places, as you can see. 2 gives us 2. So 0 will give us 0 decimal places. So back into our code, and rather than using currency 2, let's say currency 0. 0 decimal places for our format number, which means the output should be $50. Beautiful. We now have our functioning output for our numbers. So now that we have our functioning string, our date, and our number formats complete, join me for my next episode, our AMPscript learning episode number 3, as we go through and put all 3 of our learnings together so far, our string, our numbers, and our dates. We'll of course be doing some AMPscript if statements to then produce a new voucher lookup dynamically in an email to show a whole voucher content block if the customer attended the event and if they have a lucky door prize to collect. Until then, I hope you enjoyed today's video on AMPscript. If you have, please let me know in the comments below with a big thumbs up, and join me in the next episode as we cover off some more AMPscript learning.